I'm my own qualifier. My name is Rick J. Good morning to you all. And on this gorgeous day here in Nashville, Tennessee, I'm delighted to have this opportunity to bear witness to you that by the grace of God and the power of a program called the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, which we practice ourselves, fellowship called the Al-Anon family groups, the loving guidance and inspirational example of a black belt Al-Anon sponsor, I can say that I've been a continuous member of Al-Anon since the 10th day of April, 1987. And for that, I am most certainly grateful. I can assure you that when I came here on April 10th, 1987, I had zero intention of coming back on April 11th, 1987. I came here wanting an answer. Give me the answer, I can leave. You can spend all your time in this church basement, but I'm out of here. My life was going pretty good. And then she left. Like, you think it's the weeniest reason ever for coming to Al-Anon in the history of Al-Anon. But that's why I came, and I came back, actually. I had been a member of Al-Anon when I was a little kid, and in Al-Anon, and, you told me all this stuff, and yeah. Then I met that first alcoholic of the three alcoholics I was going to choose, and she was way more exciting than anybody I had met here. And I just kind of said, sayonara. I left and came back with my tail between my legs 3 years later. But what used to be a thought of how weenie it was for coming back because somebody left and will you give me the answer how to get her back? I love that saying, we live life forward, we see it backward, kind of more will be disclosed. As we stick around, more will appear to us, even those of us that are on the family side of this disease. And what I see now that I did not see then is what happened was my solution walked out the door. Because when I had somebody to fix, I didn't feel so alone. If I had somebody who needed me, they would never leave me. And how could I be a nothing? How could I be that human garbage if you approved of me? I didn't know any of that then. I'm very, very glad that I know it now. And that's why I stay here. In Toronto, I live just outside of Toronto, and we have this fabulous tradition at around Christmas time where we do a thing called a gratitude meeting, and we actually light a candle like you did here. I was talking to Steve at breakfast yesterday morning. You must have some magic sauce with your negotiating committee and this hotel to allow them to have 1,500 or so people with an open flame. Like, however you did that, like, hold on to it. Whatever you got going on here, it's working. So we pass around a fake flame, some little flickery thing, and do this gratitude meeting. It's really a lovely thing to do. And then afterwards, you have a little bite to eat. And then there was this newcomer who had been at the gratitude meeting, and you could see her kind of milling around. You know how they do, wanting to talk to you. So she comes up to me and she says, well, how long have you been in Al-Anon? And I said, well, I've been here since 1987. And she started to look a little gray and got this funny look on her face. And I said to her, were you born then? She said, no, I wasn't. And I said, well, you don't have to come this long. But I said, I keep coming because I love how my life works when I keep doing this. And have you ever had that experience where something comes out of your mouth and you go, I should remember that. Thank you, God, because that was not a conscious thought. That just kind of came out, and I thought, that's exactly why I keep coming back, because I love what this does for me. I want to see how good this thing can get. I have a friend at home, he says, the longer I come to Al-Anon, the better I get. And coincidentally, the longer I come to Al-Anon, the better you get. It's a real change of perception, and that is the truth, because we come here wanting to change people generally, right? Why do we come? Because they're drinking, and then tell us how to get them to stop drinking, it'll be good, and we find out, no, we don't talk about that, we don't do any of that kind of stuff. It's kind of like the Al-Anon con. Is alcohol a problem in your home? Yes, it is. Well, come on in. And you start talking about the alcoholic, and we say, no, we don't talk about the alcoholic here. What do we talk about? Well, we talk about ourselves. I don't have anything to say. But boy, if we get to talk about you, we love it. It's fun. I'll do anything to avoid talking about me. Thank you for the invitation. I want to thank Diane, who, as I was getting ready on Thursday morning to come down, sent me a little text saying, I got it, the COVID. Can't come to the conference, so I thank her in advance for inviting me. I want to thank my first host who had COVID. I told my wife that last night. She said, you're sleeping in the guest room when you get home. And I want to thank Martin for stepping in. It's really, really awesome. And it's lovely to be back at the Music City Roundup. I was here in 2012. My sponsor, it was the last big conference talk my sponsor gave. What a thrill it was to have the opportunity to share that with her, and those people nodding your head, you know exactly who I'm talking about. And she stood up here and did this great share, and it was kind of, because health-wise, she just wasn't able to do it anymore, and it was the longest, most reverent applause I had ever heard. And it was just this beautiful thank you for everything you have given us. My view, I'm biased, of course. I think the most powerful voice for Al-Anon recovery we've had and still have. And it just, it was a joy to be there with her. I live just outside of Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Happy to lend a little international flavor to your event here today. I love it when I come to the South, they take me out for barbecue. Barbecue here is something you eat. Where I live, a barbecue is an appliance. So kind of, when you say, here, let's go get some barbecue. If I said that at home, it's like saying, hey, let's go get some stove. We cook meat on a barbecue. We don't eat barbecue. But such is the way it goes. Had to throw it in just to let you know I'm really, really, really Canadian. Just delightful. It's marvelous to be on a program of such spectacular voices. I particularly don't want to center anyone out, but I do. And so I just want to particularly say to Joe, I don't know if he's here or not, but if you ever decide to come to Al-Anon, we'll welcome you. You're the only alcoholic I've ever met that's married the same alcoholic twice. And I tell you come to Al-Anon, you get a lot of cred when you do that. Well, you're sick, baby. You better come on in. Actually, it's kind of like you've married the same one twice. You might need more help than we can give you. Is really the way that goes, actually. But just delightful, and I'm happy to be healthy. Travel. I had a health issue about a year ago, and I had to cancel out a whole load of these things. So I've now become an advocate for on the front, kind of having things checked out. Because I went in for what was supposed to be a routine little test, on my heart, and I got a call from the doctor's office after I did the test. And I don't know what it's like in Tennessee, but the doctor where I live, the doctor never calls to say, hey, come on in, I'd like to see you. Let's have a cup of coffee. I mean, it's just kind of not that way. So they came in, they phoned and said, you better get in here pretty quick, which I did. And I sat beside the doctor like about a day and a half after I had this test. And he turned his screen around and he said, well, look at this. Not blockage, severe blockage. So you got to do something about that, like quick. And we did. And so, but I had to make a lot of phone calls, say, look, I'm sorry I can't come, but I don't know if you want your Al-Anon speaker to die on the podium. It might not be a really good idea, especially when he's from Canada. It's really expensive to get at home. Yeah, we don't want you to come. So I'm really happy to be, got a clean bill of health to be traveling, and I'm very, very glad to be doing that. In Al-Anon, we have this third tradition, and it says the only requirement for membership is that there be a problem of alcoholism in a relative or friend. And it's a very good thing that we have that requirement because, as we all know, anybody can join AA, but you got to know someone to get into Al-Anon. I've known 5 of them. A father, a grandmother, chosen 3 alcoholic women. 2 of them I met in Al-Anon. I'm really good at it. When I did my searching moral inventory, I found it was one of my assets. I just know how to pick alcoholic ladies. As I look around here, I can see a few, actually. Very, very pleasant. Alcohol never did it to me. I have a drink. Doesn't do a thing for me. Give me an alcoholic woman. I am away to the races, baby. And that's what does it for this guy. Give me someone to fix, and I'm good. That's my Jack Daniels. Right there. It took me a long time to see that, of course, because you're the problem. I'm good. Nothing wrong with me. I've been retired now for 9 years, and in my 10th year, I highly recommend it. But when I worked, I was a teacher. I taught band. I was a high school music director. Loved it. And it took me a long time to leave it. Loved it so much. But every time I stand in front of a group of people, it just feels very natural, but always feels natural to ask a few questions. So I just kind of like to bond. We're not on Zoom. You actually don't have black squares. Isn't that a great thing? Come into a real face-to-face conference and there's no black squares. No one's walking around with a piece of black paper in front of their face. No one's got a bag on their head. I can see you. You have your real name on your badge. You're not smoking a cigarette lying in bed flipping through a magazine. I mean, it's really, really great. I just love it. I'd like to ask you a few questions. Decide how many people are, just out of interest, are in Al-Anon? Put up your hand, like real hand. Well, thank you very much. You're my people. Really, really great to see you. Thank you very much. And how many people here are in Alcoholics Anonymous? Yeah, just a few. Leave your hands up. Maybe do a little like this for me, will you? Look around, ladies. Your future ex-husband is waving at you. You need someone to save. You're in the right place. Yeah! There we go. And if you're kind of like me, kind of you have this gift of picking alcoholics. So let's just see. And this is for Alcoholics Anonymous. How many people have chosen one alcoholic? Just kind of, yeah, me too. We're kind of willing to admit that might have been a mistake. So everybody, every once in a while, we can just kind of, make a wrong choice. How many people have chosen two? Okay, like the mistakes are gone now. This is now becoming purposeful. How many, like me, have chosen 3? Oh, yes, you're a heat-seeking missile. You know exactly what you want. And you got it. And like our AA speaker last night, how many people here have chosen one, left that one, and taken that one back? Oh, yes, you qualify. You really qualify. But of course, we all know. We know that the problem for the Al-Anon is the drinker. It's not us. We're the good ones. When I was engaged to my first wife, the first of those 3 alcoholic women, we had this quiet moment in the kitchen of my soon-to-be mother-in-law's house, and my fiancée was not in the room, and my soon-to-be mother-in-law said to me, "She's so much better now that she's with you." Oh, yes, thank you very, very much. You see, my halo, polish. And the problem about the halos for us Al-Anons is we polish them long enough and they get slippery and they slide right down and choke us around the neck. But we're the good ones. We hear it in AA too. AAs will talk about, "My wife is a saint for putting up with everything." Oh, yes. And you know what that does? That engorges the defect of the Al-Anon, who thinks he or she is the right one, is the good one. It takes me one step away, farther away, from looking at me. And I cannot get better if I'm looking at you. If you are my problem, the 12 steps will not work. Until it's me, this thing won't work. But when it's me, oh my God, buckle up. Because this thing is going to take us on a spiritual journey. This thing is going to take us to a place, not that we ever wanted to go. If all I ever got was what I wanted, I would have ripped myself off. But if I open myself up to where God wants, where this power can bring me in my life, there will things that have happened, things that have come in, feelings of freedom that I never even knew possible. But that all started with the acknowledgement that I am my own qualifier. I came because of you. I stay because of me. And that is a bridge that I cannot get across on my own. We heard a lot in Al-Anon, my own qualifier. I'll look for any way that I can to avoid me. My wife, when I met her, had a beautiful little Cairn Terrier, kind of a Toto, like from the Wizard of Oz. This beautiful little dog. Fabulous. And it would get out of her backyard no matter what she did. If there was the tiniest little sliver that dog could find, that dog would dig and get out of there and run away, and he was so friendly, and people would bring the dog back, or they'd go to the pound, and the dog got his tongue out, and so happy to see her, and they'd put her in the backyard, and then it'd get out again. And I'm like Buster. If you give me any avenue to escape, I'll take it. Because my overriding defect is this: I will do anything to not look at me. And the easiest way to not look at me is to look at you. And so when I say you are my own qualifier, I am saying there's nothing wrong with me. There's everything wrong with you. In our Al-Anon forum, I just ripped out the page. Last June of 2023, there was an article about this. It's titled, "The Focus is on Me," and I'd like to read you one paragraph. And it's written by an anonymous, and every time I talk now, I read this thing, and I say, if Anonymous is here, I want to meet you. Because this is one of the most brilliant bits of writing and shares that I have read in a long, long time. I believe that reliance on the word qualifier undermines my recovery. It implies that I would not be an Al-Anon without the fault of someone else. It puts the focus outside of me and says, if they hadn't hurt me, I wouldn't need to be here. It keeps my success in Al-Anon firmly attached to theirs. It keeps alive the hope that if they would change, I would feel and act better. Killer. Right there. And there's a lot of people in Al-Anon right now who don't like me anymore. It's fun to talk about the alcoholic. That requirement, the only problem be the problem of alcoholism. I flipped it around, that the only requirement for membership be that there be a problem with a relative or friend who has alcoholism. I put the focus squarely on the other person. And you can see why it's so easy to do that, because the things that the alcoholic does are just they're crazy. The Al-Anon's like, we're just boring. We're the ones that say we need a loaf of bread. We go to the store and get a loaf of bread, and we come home with a loaf of bread. Who wants to hear that story? Change the channel. But the alcoholic goes to the store for a loaf of bread. 2 days later, they wake up in Tokyo. That's the story I want to hear. And so I just kind of hook on to that thing. Because they're exciting, they're energetic. When I met that first of those three alcoholics, she was alive, she was energetic, she'd done all those great things. And it was on the phone. So for those who are young, a phone is a thing that used to be attached to the wall, a cord, you hold it up to your ear like that. That's how long ago that was. So I need to focus on this. And we say in Al-Anon all the time, and again, this is me being Buster. Alcoholism is a family disease. Because I have this magic way of putting everything out there. Yes, alcoholism is a family disease, which all you have. Or have been affected by somebody else's drinking. Again, puts it out there to you. I refer to the alcoholics in my life as my alcoholic. Why do we refer to the people we love by the disease they have? I have diabetes. Not once has my wife ever said, this is my diabetic. But we do it with our alcoholic all the time. I was sharing about this at something in Texas one time, and about kind of seeing the people we love who have a disease called alcoholism as people who have a disease, as opposed to the disease that they've got. And she comes up to me and she says, if I can't call him my alcoholic, what can I call him? To which I said, does he have a name? She said, well, yes, Fred. I said, that's a very, very good place to start. Because I do. See, again, there's me being Buster. There's me kind of finding any way to get outside of me. And of course, everybody around sees that the problem is the alcoholic. And they support us in the problem, that the problem is the alcoholic. And, oh, you're so good. My mother's name was Connie. Oh, Connie, you're so fantastic. You're putting up with that. You're an angel, Connie. You're a miracle worker, Connie. Oh, yes. Such is the way alcoholism, the family disease, looks. Hear the alcoholics all the time talk about, like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, kind of like the two faces of the alcoholic. For the Al-Anon, it's the three faces of Eve. Might even be the 30 faces of Eve. Who's going to show up today? Who am I going to pretend to be so that you'll accept me today? Am I going to be the angry guy? Am I going to be the quiet guy? Am I going to be the loving guy? Am I going to be the a-hole guy? Which guy am I going to be today? You didn't know, and I didn't know. And I didn't even know I was doing that. But of course, the problem's the alcoholic. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm good. I just keep picking them, but it's bad judgment. Get into all these toxic relationships. I was the toxic one. That's the reality of my life. Anyway, I grew up in this thing. I had these alcoholics. There were 5 of them. Grandmother, father, and then these 3 alcoholic women. And the father really was the dominant one. We had a whole cast of supporting characters. And so the many facets, the many faces of alcoholism, the family disease start to appear when we can kind of take a look back at it through the lens of family alcoholism as opposed to through the lens of victim. If I'm looking at it through the lens of victim, everything that went on was being done to me. There's the selfishness of the Al-Anon. We talk about the selfishness of the alcoholic. Look at the selfishness of the Al-Anon. Everything going on is about me. When I take a look at it through this other lens, when I take a look at it through the lens of disease, I can start to get some distance. I can start to get some compassion. When I can get distance from that, I can get closer to inside of what's going on with me. So my grandfather, my father's father, immigrated to Canada in the teens of the 1900s from the Ukraine. My grandmother immigrated to Canada around the same time from Scotland. And we all know that the Scottish love to drink, and she had like more brothers than I've ever been able to count. And the Ukrainian side, just kind of vanished. We never really met any of them. But the Scottish side, they were around a lot. And we would have these gatherings, these clan gatherings. And isn't it the most natural thing to want to do? That the family will get together. I mean, it's just like, it's natural. And they would come in and do you remember the fun of alcohol in the beginning? It wasn't bad. You never hear anybody standing up here, except in Al-Anon. You never hear any alcoholic standing up and say, I took my first drink, and it was awful. They talk about it going to the bottom of their toes and to the top of their head. That's what it felt like when I met that first alcoholic woman, actually. That's exactly what it felt like to me. But it was fun. And even for us, the non-drinkers, it was fun. And so I was a little kid, and all of the uncles would come over. My grandmother would come over. They're waving, they're laughing, they're telling jokes, they start drinking their scotch. And there's this beautiful sound of a good time. But then, as more drinking happens, the sound gets louder, gets a little meaner, gets a little scary. Remember that? Then more drinking carries on. And before you know it, there's screaming going on. There's throwing of fists. There's smashing. And everybody leaves. And we had a little kid say, what happened? I thought this was going to be a good time. Well, like every good alcoholic family, what do? We're going to do it again? It's going to be different. We all know the story. I mean, you could all tell the same story. So over they come, and it's fun, then it's loud, then it's scary, and we do it again, and it's fun, and it's loud, and it's scary. And then the family disease kicks in, and all of a sudden, nobody says anything, but no longer are we getting together at Christmas. Nobody's talking. Nobody's had a mad. Missed Uncle George's birthday this year. Oh, well. Hey, they're not coming over to visit anymore. And after a while, the family just goes. And such is alcoholism, the family disease. And I hear about a cousin whose half-naked body was found on the side of a road, Western Canada. Had to identify her by dental records. An aunt, my father's sister, cousin comes home and her mother's dead on the couch surrounded by bottles. An uncle, body was found when the neighbors in the apartment next door complained of an odor. There's a lonely way to go. Such is the alcoholism in the family that I grew up in. That's the fertile soil I came from. But it wasn't always bad. Sometimes it was really good, and my father wasn't always drunk. Matter of fact, when he wasn't drunk, he was a really fun guy, and that was kind of one of the symptoms. How does this work? How does this person who's so great here become such a terror here? Like, I just could never quite figure that out. And what happened over time was that the hardest times to deal with were not the violent episodes of drinking, but they were the quiet moments between the violent episodes, because it was impossible to rest. Because there was that sure knowledge that, when's it going to happen again? And it was almost like, in some bizarre way, a relief when it happened again, because at least I knew what was happening. You know, there's one of the questions we talk about in Al-Anon: did you feel more alive in the midst of a crisis? Yeah, because at least I knew what was going on. And here's one of the challenges: we ask us to get quiet. Well, if I get quiet, I get frightened. And if things are too quiet, if there's no energy going on, I got to create something. So I'll stir it up. That's me. That's not the alcoholic doing that. But of course, the alcoholic's the problem. I'm not going to look at me. But Dad wanted to do things. Dad loved his boy. I know that. If there was never a time when I didn't think I didn't know that my dad loved me. And so he would say, "Hey, son, let's go up. We're going to go up to our friend's cottage. There's a beautiful lake house. And we're going to do some fishing. We're going to go out in the boat. We're going to do swimming. Dad, this is fantastic." And so the day would come and would get in the car. This is how long ago this was. The car had a bench seat in the front. Is there at least two people here that remember a bench seat in the front of a car? That's right, yeah. So for the young people, the people that don't know that the telephones used to be attached to the wall, that a bench seat was like one seat. That went from the driver's side all the way over to the passenger side. It was great when you're in there with your date and you slide over, baby. Just beautiful. And so, but that's what was in the seat of this car, in the front of the car. We would go up to this place where the cottage was, and we'd make one stop before we got to the cottage. You get one guess where the stop was. Dad would run in, get to the liquor store, come out with the bottle of whiskey wrapped in brown paper, put the bottle on the bench seat in between him and I. And at that moment, I was powerless over alcohol. Alcohol was king. And we'd get to the cottage and I'd go swimming. Dad, let's go swimming. No, it's okay, son. He'd sit on the dock, drinking the rye whiskey. Dad, let's go fishing. Oh, it's okay, son. I'll bait the hook for you. But Dad, let's do it together. No, it's okay, son. I'll watch you. And the son would fish along. Dad, can we go out in the boat? Yeah, but you have to use the oars. Oh, Dad, I want to use the motor. No, it's okay, but just kind of go close. And Dad would sit on the dock and watch the boy row the boat. And here's alcoholism, the family disease. The son wanted to be doing those things with his father. And the father wanted to be doing those things with his son. But alcohol is king. Alcohol will interfere with anything, even the love of a child. He wasn't doing that on purpose. See, my father had a disease called alcoholism. He was an alcoholic. He did other things. My dad loved to really do three things. He loved to drink, he loved to garden, he loved to take off their clothes. I don't know what that is about alcoholics. It should be on your list of questions. When you drink, do you take off your clothes? If you answered yes, you're an alcoholic, go to AA. So that gets warm up in Canada sometimes. It's not always cold. And so my dad would start gardening at the back, and he'd be fully clothed. He'd open up his bottle of beer, start smoking his cigarettes, and he'd start working his way to the front of the house. So by mid-afternoon, at the hottest part of the day, there was this kind of little trail of clothing right up to, and there's Dad out front gardening. And so you get the image. Do you remember when we used to put suntan oil on to attract the sun? Remember that? Instead of lotion to repel the sun, oil to attract the sun. So there's my dad. My dad's a beer drinker, and we all know the marvelous six-pack figure of a beer drinker. Just like magic, really. A vision for you. I mean, totally. And he had taken his Bermuda shorts and turned it into a thong and was wearing sandals. And he's right out front. We're horrified. Dad, what are you doing out there? He goes, baby. There's the alcoholic. There's the Al-Anon. Pickle stuck up our butt. But they're out there having a good time. I can see my mother. You get in here right now, you hunk. I want you right on the floor. Alcoholism, look at where it brings us. And he had an anger problem. Anybody here met an alcoholic with an anger problem? Yeah, just a few of you. The only people I've ever met that are angrier than the alcoholics are the Al-Anons. Police come over in those violent episodes, and who am I taking away today? My mother's going out of her mind! Dad's just sitting still. just the way that goes. But we had this guy in the street that would race cars up and down and motorcycles up and down, and my dad would get mad. So he went after this guy and stopped, and they're having this to-do. Cigarette, beer bottle, oiled up beer belly, Bermuda shorts turned into a thong, sandals. Oh, yes, it's just beautiful. And he's out there doing that, and we're inside ashamed. They're doing it. We're embarrassed. He is showing the world his ass. We can't show our face. Alcoholism, the family disease. That's what I'm doing. Years later, happy to tell you, Dad got sober. That was a good thing. And that was around the time, their bumper stickers were big. So you'd put the bumper stickers in the back of the car. Let go, let God, easy does it. My mother says to my father, Donald, that's my father's name, Donald, for God's sake, why do you have the bumper stickers on the back of the car? They're going to see them. Everybody's going to see them. I said, Mom, they've seen everything else. But isn't that the deal? We don't think anybody knows when they're drinking, and when they're sober, shh. Don't say anything. Don't tell. Alcoholism, the family disease. But of course, the problem is the alcoholic. There's nothing wrong with us. If only they will do what I want them to do, I'll be just fine. Thank you, baby. Thank you. It took me a long time to see who I was in all of that. And a friend say it like this: alcoholism is like rabies. Everybody is frothing at the mouth. They weren't doing it to me. They weren't doing it because of me. They weren't doing it at me. They were just doing it. Alcoholism moved in and took up permanent residency. Now, some people say we never talked about it. That's all we talked about. It was a never-ending conversation. That's when I became an adult child. Adult being the adjective, child being the noun. So when I'm 5 years old and I'm listening to the episodes that are going on, and I become my mother's 5-year-old protector, become my mother's 7-year-old sexual confidant, her 9-year-old supplier of all things emotional. I was called upon to do adult things when I was a child. Nobody was doing that to me. It was just being done. That's what alcoholism looked like in the home that I grew up in. As I biologically grew up, I became a child adult. Child being the adjective. Grown-up person acting like a child. Looking for you to satisfy everything that I wanted. Blaming you for everything that was wrong in my life. I would do things in the midst of all that alcoholism too. I would look for ways to protect myself. I would take all the clothes out of my closet in my little bedroom, and I would bring in a little table and a chair. I'd hang a light over the bar that you'd put the clothes on. I'd bring in paper and a colored pen, some crayons, and I'd make up this sign that said, "Keep out." and I'd put it on the outside of the door, and I'd pull myself inside the closet, close the door, turn on the light, and wish for you to come in. And didn't I do that when I was growing up? Didn't I do that as an adult? Didn't I so desperately want you to come in, but I was incapable of allowing you in? I was a hider, an isolator, a chameleon. What do you want me to be? I'll be that. I'll be anything as long as you'll accept me. Again, I didn't know any of it. And thank God I know it today. Because if I don't have it, I can't get better from it. I cannot get better from something you've got. And Al-Anon is spectacular at helping me get from the side where I'm blaming you to the side where I can say, oh my God, look at who I am in this situation. And that's when I can start to get better. Beautiful thing happened to me in 1968. I was 11 years old. My mother had gone to Al-Anon. My mother actually went to Al-Anon in 1964. I mean, it's like so long ago, it's hard to even fathom how long ago that was. And in 1965, in Toronto, was the AA International Convention. And my mother went to that convention. And at that convention, Al-Anon was very young then. Alateen was even younger. But she saw a few of these kids at this conference. And she knew she was getting some of this good stuff in Al-Anon, and she wanted it for her kids. And so a few years later, in 1968, the Alateens had started to organize. And so they held an Alateen convention. Man, you want to be at a convention that's got some energy. You go to a convention of these Alateen. Oh, my God! It's like off the chart. Amazing fun. And so back then, you didn't have to do what we have to do now. Back then, they could simply say in the Al-Anon groups, hey, we have Alateens coming from out of town. Is there anybody who can take them into their home? We can't do that now. Now, you have to submit to a retinal scan and give a pint of blood before you can work with the Alateens. But that's just the way that goes. I'm not resentful about that at all. None. And so my mother, into this actively drinking alcoholic home that I described some elements of it to, said, hey, I'll take 3. There's God doing what none of us could do. And so literally, in April of 1968, 3 teenagers from Kalamazoo, Michigan, walked into the front door of our tiny little 1,000-square-foot bungalow on the east side of Toronto. And for the first time in my life that I could remember, I felt okay. Somebody got it. I didn't say anything. I just sat with these teenagers while they talked and laughed and had a good time in this home where all this violence was happening. Here, this recovery walked through our front door. My blessed mother did that. I went to their conference, was knocked out by it. Started going to Alateen when I was an 11-year-old boy, and they told me these amazing things. I didn't believe any of them, but I wanted you to accept me, so I told you I believed them. Don't a lot of us do that? Anybody here like that? Yeah. Politely in Al-Anon, we say we're people pleasers. That is the biggest misnomer we have. Saying I'm a people pleaser has some kind of insinuates that I have a scintilla of regard for your well-being. I don't. The only thing I'm interested in is me. And so I'm an approval sucker. And so I'll do whatever I need to do. I'll say whatever I think I need to say so that you will approve of me. And then for a brief moment in time, I can feel, okay, I kind of believe that a power greater than myself called approval could restore me to sanity. That's exactly what that was. There was my solution, you see, the 30 faces of Eve. There's all of that stuff going on. That's me. And I'm not seeing any of it. But I get at Alateen and they say, hey, Rick, your father has a disease. He is not a disgrace. Oh, really? My father's the one parading out there with Bermuda shorts turned into a thong in the middle of the street, all oiled up. He is a disgrace, but I wanted you to accept me. So I said, okay. They said, Rick, your father is an alcoholic. He is not a bad man. Oh, really? You don't live in the house I live in. You don't see what goes on in our house in the middle of the night. It's bad. Then they said, Rick, your father, when he takes one, he can never not take another one. Oh, come on. You want me to believe that? Like, what? That's stupid. But I wanted to fit in. So they said, oh, okay. And they said, Rick, your father's not drinking because of anything you said or anything you do. Oh, yes, he is. Yes, he is. If I did better in school, if I said things the right way, if I fixed that thing he asked me to fix better, he wouldn't be drinking. Such is another face of the family disease of alcoholism. Not the 3 faces of Eve, the 30 faces of Eve. But I love the fellowship. Oh my God, the fellowship is magnificent. To this very day. That's the thing I miss most when we were doing all that Zoom stuff, is the fellowship. There's this kind of like this, there's all these squares on a screen or nothing, like seeing you, feeling the energy. You're vulnerable with me, I'm vulnerable with you. Like there's just nothing like it. And the fellowship just grabbed me. And I found so much relief in the fellowship. And thank God we find the relief in the fellowship. Isn't that a beautiful thing? I love it to this very day. I love the laughter. I love the connection. I love the nodding head. We're all, the Al-Anon bobbleheads. That's how we are. It's the most powerful thing we do. Don't do anything other than this. You're in. Thank you very much. I don't feel alone anymore. As soon as you nod your head up and down, I know I'm with my people. And so, but the problem with fellowship, the problem with the relief of fellowship is that it's so powerful. And if one is like me and they don't believe that the problem is inside, but it's outside, then all I do is the fellowship. And I misinterpret the relief I feel for the recovery you are talking about. And if I'm doing relief, but not recovery, I'm sitting in these rooms getting worse. And that happened to me. When I was in high school, I went to a Catholic high school to take us away to this Trappist monastery in Quebec, the French province. And we would be there for a week. It was just a phenomenal experience. And one of the activities during the time we were there was they gave us a personality test. I always joke I failed. Can't even pass out a personality test. But they came back with the result. And my result for my personality was amorphic. I've never heard anybody use that word since then. I still, sometimes I still have to look it up as to what it meant. And so I said to them, well, what does that mean? And they said, well, that means that you can just kind of, you're flexible. You can kind of shape yourself around whatever situation you're in. And I said, well, that's perfect. I can just really get along. And they said, no, Rick, that's not perfect. That means you don't know who you are. Oh, I don't want to hear that. I like talking about the alcoholic so much because I want the alcoholic to be the problem. Because if the alcoholic is the problem, I don't have to do anything about myself. But when they told me that day that I had that was the beginning. Didn't see my victimization definition of victim when I allow the past to become more powerful than the present. And didn't I do that all the time? All the time. And what does this program tell us to do? Be in the present moment. Be in now. Don't be a lifer. It doesn't say anywhere be a lifer. You hear that a lot. I'm here for life. Well, I said that and I left. So I don't say I'm here for life anymore. Then I used to say, okay, I'm not a lifer. I'm a dayer. D-A-Y-E-R. And then we joke, ha, 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 ha. So I have this dear friend at home, a long-time member of AA, 51 years now. Her name is Mildred, just a delightful, delightful person. And so we meet every Monday morning at 10:45. We do this prayer thing. And so I was giggling with her about not being a lifer, not being a dayer, and she kind of laughed, and then there was a pause. And I'll tell you, when you're talking to somebody with a half a century of sobriety and they pause, hold on. Because they're coming back with something that you want to know. And she said, I'm not a lifer and I'm not a dayer. I'm a nower. N-O-W-E-R. She said, I want to be right here, right now, because that's where God lives. Beautiful. And so that's my deal now. And I said, Mildred, it's hilarious, but it's true. So that's what I try to be. I'll hear life, well, good luck on your life. Or I'm an Al-Anon retread. I was here, left, came back. I now want to be a nower, and that is how I want to live. But I wasn't doing that when I was an Alateen. So I hung around in Alateen, did all this stuff, talking in Alateen. I remember the first invitation I got to talk when I was in Alateen. You know how I got the invitation? In a letter, handwritten, that came in the mailbox. A mailbox? Paper? A letter? That's how I got the first invitation ever to talk. Now, we kind of get them on text. You come to a place, you never met them ever in your life. Sometimes you never do meet them. So far that we've come, but that's how that happened. So I did all of that stuff, and then I timed out. I aged out of Alateen. I was involved in all this relief, involved in doing all this stuff. And they said, Rick, you got to get out of here. You can't be bald and have a beard and stay in Alateen. I whined my way out. Definition of whining: anger escaping through a very small hole. So I found my way to an Al-Anon meeting and sat there, and I was just kind of this Alateen graduate, I'd pat my head, it's so great, we have an Alateen graduate in the room, and I was the only guy in the room, and a room full of women, and every once in a while another guy had come in, and I was not welcome either. This is my harem, get out of here. These are my girls. Such is the way I am. But I wasn't doing anything. And here's the thing. It is possible to come here for a very long time and do nothing. Get involved in activity, the activity of fellowship, which is great. But at the end of the day, if all I'm doing is the activity of fellowship, being on committees and being in service and doing all that kind of stuff, at the end of the day, I've been involved in a whole load of activity, but I'm like a hamster on a wheel. Running all day, stop when the day is over, I'm in the same place, I'm just tired. And that's what I did for a long time. And I slowly just drifted away. I never made a decision, I'm going to stop. I just stopped. I had met that first of 3 alcoholic women. I didn't meet her in a meeting because I wasn't going to them. And the situation was that I was ripe because all I'd been doing is relief. I had a whole head full of what this stuff is. With just even a minimum of IQ, you can kind of grab onto this stuff and spout it out, and everybody thinks you know so much. Then I start to think I know so much I don't know anything. But I'm spouting it away. Kind of like, the Charlie Brown commercial. Wah, 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 wah. Just kind of like that. That was me. So I left out, and I was in university by this time. I was studying music. I was at a classical music school, and I played the tuba. Now I know that that's everybody's wish and desire in here, but it's my reality, and I get to do it. Beautiful. Still play it to this day. Still play the symphony orchestra. No. Anyhow, so I applied to go to this school out in Western Canada, out in Banff, where we were some time ago. And I was playing in a group of 5 people. I was one, and there was 4 others. And the person that invited me to come to participate in this program at this school in Banff, Alberta, it's kind of in the west of Canada, kind of above Montana there, said, "Hey, why don't you contact the other 4 people in the group? Have a few rehearsals before you come to the program." It was like a 6-week program in the summer, and do a few rehearsals before you. Great idea. So I phoned 3 of them. We made an arrangement for a rehearsal, and I phoned her. Now, I'm here to tell you that my attraction to an alcoholic, I don't even need to see you. I just need to talking to you, and there's an energy that just goes, and it came right through the phone. So what was supposed to be this 5-minute little conversation to arrange a rehearsal turned into this hour-long lust fest. And she had been places I wanted to go, and she had met people I wanted to meet, and she had played music with people that I wanted to play music with, and she was alive, she was exciting, she was energetic, and I was going on the phone. And I said, this is amazing. And so we started talking more and more, and I started asking around about her because I'm a good researcher, and I found out that, she was really experienced. She was a great trumpet player, had a terrific amount of experience. I didn't have a whole lot of experience, at least not with other people. I had to do something in that closet. And that was attractive to me. And then, so we'd start talking on the phone now and then. And then she would start telling me things about what was happening to her. Hey, my father's doing this to me. Oh, really? And this little guy inside me, because I'm a fixer, says, I can help you with that. And another conversation. Her brother's doing something to her. Really? I can help you with that. And then one afternoon, where a guy like me had a summer job? In the liquor store. True story. I'm in the liquor store on a Saturday afternoon with this part-time job. Somehow she phones me. She's drunk. And she says, my boyfriend was supposed to come over. He didn't come over. I drank this bottle of wine. Do you want to come over? I'd been in Al-Anon for an awful long time. A little part of me kind of said, wow, this isn't bad. But the rest of me said, I can help you with that. And then we're way to the races we were. And so we met, we did have a few rehearsals, actually. And then we met at the airport in Toronto, what used to be Terminal 2, this really big, long terminal. And I'm sitting on the bench with my mother beside me because I am my mother's protector. And her son is going away. Dad's there with me. And in she came. And guys, it was fantastic. And so she didn't come down. She was this cute, glistening black hair, blue top. I can still see it right now. Magic. And in she came, and she was bouncing as she's coming up. She got her suitcase in one hand, her trumpets in the other. And I'm going like, ah. And she comes right in front of us, bends right down and says, hi. And I'm looking going, man, oh man, I'm about to have a spiritual experience here. My mother looked at us and went into mild cardiac arrest. A father's eyes popped right out of his head. And we hopped on the airplane, and away we go. We're on our way to Banff, Alberta. And I ordered a beer. Now, for those of you who are in AA, for an Al-Anon, when we order a beer, it's singular. We mean one. We are those ones that you joke. I hear you joking about us. Sometimes you're even bold enough to talk about it from the podium. When you're out and you see somebody get a drink. I love the fact that alcoholics also watch people drink, because the Al-Anons do it all the time. I just think that's pretty great. And the drink will come, and this person won't even touch it. And it'll take a little while. They'll have a sip. And it's lasted 2 hours, and they leave, and there's still wine in the glass, and you're going crazy. That's me. Constitutionally incapable. Can't help it. I was born that way. That's just the way the alcohol didn't do it to me. So I had a beer. But she had 5 in the time it took us to go from Toronto all the way out to Calgary, Alberta, to catch a bus to go up to Banff. And if there's anything I tell you today that you can take to the bank, it's that she had 5 beers, because I have never met an Al-Anon that can't count. And quite conversely, I have never met an alcoholic who can. And how many of you had? You all know the answer. A couple. It's universal. At your country, my country, anywhere else in the world, I ask that question. The answer is all the same. My conspiracy theory is that you take a course. That there's a course for potential alcoholics. Good morning, potential alcoholics. Really nice to see you. Thanks for coming. The course won't last long, but it's a really important lesson. Never admit to more than 2. Repeat that. How many of you had a couple? Congratulations, you pass. Go forth and prosper. That's my conspiracy theory about the alcoholic. And then we get to the school, and I discover that some things are pretty awesome when there's another human being in the room. Really, really great. We're playing music, but then there's something even better. So we'd play music, we'd have sex, and then we would have therapy. She would tell me what was wrong, and I would tell her how to fix it. I felt strong. I felt whole. I felt valuable. I felt needed. I felt wanted. I did not feel like human garbage. I felt like Bill talks about in that story in the big book. And a couple of weeks into what I used to call a relationship, my friend Mildred says, Rick, that was not a relationship. That was a parasitic entanglement. Anybody ever get in any of those? Hey, if you're on some kind of dating site, put that in. Looking for a parasitic entanglement. You're going to find one. Heard a guy say it like this, 2 ticks without a dog. That's what I get into. And so a couple of weeks into this thing, whatever you want to call it, she says to me, Rick, she said, I've been seeing a therapist for a long time, but I don't need to see that therapist anymore because now I have you. Pull that in. That's what a cocktail looks like for an Al-Anon of my type. That's my Jack Daniels. That's my martini. That's the thing that takes me out of me, focuses on you. I do not have to look at me. This is absolutely fantastic. I get home, people are saying, what are you doing with this person? Do I say, we have lots in common, I say, no, deep down inside there's a beautiful person, and I'm going to help bring her out. We don't get into relationships, we get into full-time jobs. And then when you get into a full-time job, and then you have it in control, then you go looking for someone else if you're a person like me. So I graduated from university. I found myself sitting in front of a principal of an inner-city school in downtown Toronto saying to me, Rick, we have a lot of very needy students in this school. Brother, I'm the man for you. He said, these kids can't do anything. Oh, really? Just watch me get those kids to do things so I will look good. 3 years later, we put on a musical. I'm teaching music. Fiddler on the Roof. The whole show. Singing, I'm conducting the orchestra, the whole deal. After the last performance, I'm down there in the pit. The principal gets up on stage, is talking, calls me up in front of the whole school. All the people in attendance. Hugs me, pushes me back, but doesn't let me go and says to me, he said, Rick, I've made a lot of decisions since I've been principal of this school, but the best decision I ever made was to hire you. Came to believe that a power greater than myself, called approval, could restore me to sanity. I would follow that search for approval to the gates of hell. I thought it worked, but it never worked. We say that in Al-Anon a lot of times. You have to stop to do. They worked once, but they don't work now. A newsflash: they never worked. But it's the only tool I had. And if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. But Al-Anon tells me many, many other things. We got married. She left. I came back. It's basically how that worked. And I was mad. I was hurt, but then I got mad. Anybody like me, when you're hurt, you don't know what to do with the hurt, so you get angry. You get resentful. You seek revenge. And God gave me my opportunity. We were playing together in the same symphony orchestra. She played trumpet, I played tuba, 3 people in between us. Had this concert to play. We had to drive east of the city along the highway. I'm driving to the concert one day. Her car had broken down on the side of the highway. She was standing there trying to get some help to get to the concert. I see her. I drive by going, ha, 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 you get what you deserve. And it was one of the happiest moments of my life. Such is the disease I have. We get there, they can't start the concert because the lead trumpeter can't make it. She comes in all flustered, I'm going, ha, 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 ha. But of course, there's nothing wrong with me. It's all about you. I come back to Al-Anon, you start telling me to do these things. I'm still hanging around. I get involved in fellowship yet again, but it's deep now. I'm starting to see this anger thing is coming out all over the place. See somebody on the side of the road, they step off. I want to point my car at them. I'm standing on a sidewalk trying to cross the street. A bus is coming down. A thought comes in, step in front of the bus, Rick. Pain's over. The pain was there. The desperation was there. I've got no alcohol doesn't take it away. The thing that took it away is gone. I'm alone. I'm listening to you people share. I'm not doing what you're doing, and I'm certainly not getting what you're describing you're getting. And 7 years in, and I'm doing this prayer thing with my friend Mildred, and I'm saying, I need a sponsor. And they said, sponsor needs to be a man, sponsor needs to be this, sponsor needs to live close by, la-da-da-da-da. I read all this stuff. Couldn't find anybody. I'm a guy in Al-Anon. Al-Anon is 87% women, 13% men. It's we're a little skewed for us to kind of find a sponsor. Anyway, we're at this conference, and my friend Mildred introduces me to a speaker. She was speaking on Saturday, and then Friday we went out, and I thought, oh my God, I love what this woman has, but she scares the crap out of me. And on Saturday she talked and came to get me and said, hey, let's go get some ice cream. And as we're walking along this street in downtown Toronto, Front Street, from the Royal York Hotel to a beautiful restaurant called Marché, this woman, about to be my sponsor, says to me, one of the most beautiful things we can ask anybody here. Tell me about you. Listen to that. Tell me about you. And I said, well, I was on a camping trip one time with that wife, and I had this impulse. I had these impulses a lot, but I said this was the worst, and I had this impulse to chop at her head with an axe. The axe was even raised up. I said, it's a true thing. Such is mine. This is what happens when you bury. It pushes its way out. And she laughed. She just finished telling us a story about trying to drown her husband in a bathtub. We identified. She's not a man. She lives in Arkansas, and this is the sponsor. So I wrote her a letter. I went to this thing in Kansas City. I wrote a letter, said, hey, I'll do absolutely anything you will ask me to do if you'll be my sponsor. And she sent me a letter back, and I wrote that letter in July of 1994. She returned the letter to me 2 weeks later, July of 1994. And in 2 weeks, this woman and I will celebrate 30 years of walking this thing together. Doing the deal. No longer seeking your relief. Doing the deal. She said, welcome to the family. I talked to my husband about sponsoring a man. My husband said, what's the problem? Is it a legitimate Al-Anon request? She said, yes, it is. He said, go for it. And I've talked to that woman every single Monday night for 30 years. Still talk for over an hour. And now we're on Zoom. We all our sponsees get together every couple of weeks. But she gave me this package of things to do. She started to tell me things to do. She started to tell me to take action, not just activity, action, things that are going to move me from point A to point B, not keep me stuck at A. She said, start doing a daily routine. So I do that daily routine to this very day, where as soon as I wake up, I say out loud, good morning, God. First time I did that, I was with alcoholic number 3. She rolled over and said, good morning. Loved it. But I kept doing it, and then she said, do this talk in the mirror. I said, good morning. I said, good morning, Rick, when I get in front of the mirror. There's absolutely nothing that can happen today that you and I cannot handle together. And I hated my own image. That was one of my ideals. I taught high school. I could take a look at the first 6 years of the yearbooks. When I taught, there was a blank picture because I wouldn't get my picture taken. I abhorred my own image. I'd hack at my own hair. I used to have hair. I'd hack away at it because I couldn't stand to sit in front of. That's me. That's who I was. If I could have smarted my way out of this, I would have. 2 university degrees. I could have easily smarted my way out of this. It didn't work. I kind of got to accept. I got to dumb my way out of this thing. I got to do the stupidest things. Say out loud, good morning, God. Speak to myself in the mirror. Read a book. Put a little note in my pocket and carry it around. How lame! But that's what I did. And I had this experience. See, because in Al-Anon we have a 5th tradition that says we encourage and understand the alcoholic. It's part of what it is. Practice the steps, encourage and understand the alcoholic, welcome and give comfort. Now, I've never met an alcoholic I need you to encourage. Anybody here ever met one? Hey, hon, you're looking a little rough tonight. We'd like a shot and a couple of beers. I never had to say that to any alcoholic in my life. What the encouragement means is if I change, it may be the thing that encourages the alcoholic to change. But it says understand the alcoholic. Now, I will never understand an alcoholic the way an alcoholic can understand an alcoholic. But you see, the alcoholic for me is like an octopus on my face. And until I can get some little crack of light in this absolute obsession with them, there is no possible way I can begin to look at me. So I'm at a conference in Toronto one time. There's a flyer on the seat. It says, Big Book Seminar in London, Ontario, by Joe and Charlie, the original guys, the original Arkansas guys. And at its bottom it said, Al-Anon welcome. Tradition 5 in the description says, Al-Anons may find it helpful to read the basic text, Alcoholics Anonymous, and to go to open AA meetings. Big Book Seminar, I'm an Al-Anon, Al-Anons welcome, practicing the 12 steps of AA myself, I'm going. So I go to this thing, and there's this man, Joe McHugh, from Little Rock, doing this talk on the thing that the alcoholics we love have that we don't have in Al-Anon, the phenomenon of craving. And he does, and this how long ago it was a real blackboard, it was a green board actually, with a real piece of chalk. And he's kind of tracing out this phenomenon of craving. In me, the guy with the total octopus on the face with the alcoholics, plural in my life, is mesmerized by this alcoholic talking about the thing the alcoholics have that I don't have. And when Joe was finished talking, doing that at the blackboard, he said this. He said, and that's why when an alcoholic is in the bar drinking all night and they walk out and fall on flat in their face in a puddle of water in the parking lot, and somebody comes over and kind of lifts them up and says, sir, can I help you? The alcoholic will say, yes, get me another drink. And at that moment, that alcoholic, Joe McHugh, talking to this Al-Anon, helped the octopus to come away. And I had, for the first time in my life, some compassion for the alcoholics in my life. Because you see, all those things that they told me in Alateen all those years ago were 100% true. My father was an alcoholic. He was not a bad man. My father had a disease. He was not a disgrace. He took one, he could not take a second. He couldn't even not take the first one. And there was nothing I could have said, nothing that I could have done, no way I could have encouraged him to stop him from drinking. It was true. And all this stuff that was in my head, oftentimes the journey from the head to the heart can be the longest one. And an alcoholic man sharing in a room where they'd invited the family members in created the opening for me to do the stuff my sponsor was about to tell me to do. And I did that step one with her. And so kind of like we did the 5th step process with the step one. And when I was finished doing the step one, she said this, and listen to these beautiful words. First beautiful words, tell me about you. Oh, blessed. She said, Rick, we finished doing the step one. She said, congratulations, you've done step one to the best of your ability today. Move on. Beautiful. Did 2, did 3, did the inventory, come down, did the step 5, finished the step 5. We burnt it. Kept the list of resentments, all that kind of stuff. But we kind of burnt all this other stuff. Al-Anon, 4th step, 5th step, the primary question answer. That's what I did. And so we burnt it, and with each page we said a prayer, God help Rick move forward with a new way of life with you as his guide. And we come back in, and I sat down at the kitchen table, and I said to her, this guy from Canada, sitting in the kitchen of a house in North Little Rock, Arkansas. There's absolutely nothing I have not told you. And I was not lying. It was the truth. And she looked at me and she said, Rick, I love you more because I know you better. I'd spent my whole life walking towards New York, but I wanted to go to Los Angeles. And the steps took me, even though I didn't want to do them. I think it's inversely proportional. They're effective inversely proportional to how much I want to do them. If I don't want to do them at all, they're terrifically effective. And you just kind of do this stuff. We take action against our thinking. And that was really kind of like the power experience there. And I did the amends and doing it on and on and on. If we were doing a weekend step talk, this would be a great introduction to it. Thank God we're not. But I am an Al-Anon and on and on. Yeah. So I'm going to end. I'd just like to tell you 2 stories. Because, all of doing that step work is kind of the beginning of the journey. Not the beginning, it is the journey to the awakening. Isn't it an amazing thing? We come in here looking at how to get them sober. I came in here looking at how to get her back. What does this thing promise to us? And isn't it amazing that the same steps that work for the alcoholic work for the Al-Anon? How is that a thing? But it is a thing. And it's a thing because I have alcoholism, mental, emotional, spiritual disease, the family disease. I don't have the phenomenon of craving. If I did, I'd be on the other side. I don't have that phenomenon of craving. Yep, here we go. Lee's telling me I got 10 minutes and the CD's going to run out. I got this up here, Lee. So let me tell you these two stories and we're done. So I did all this stuff, but some of the promises are really, they all come true, but then there's experiences that come true. There's things that we get to do. So when I was doing my fifth step, one of the things that came out was I have no children, and I never wanted any children. I kind of felt guilty and funny about that. And my sponsor said, well, it could be because you had this anger and rage thing, and somewhere you knew that if you had a kid and it triggered it, that you'd harm the kid. And that's true, because there were times when I was teaching. One time I'm walking down the hall, a kid came up and touched my tie. Instinctively, I grabbed him, threw him into a locker, and put my fist in his face. Almost lost my job. There is something wrong with me. This is in me. And she said, on some level, you might have known that you would have done something to those kids. So I met this beautiful woman. I'm now married to her. I'm married to somebody in Al-Anon who obsesses about whom. I'm still not quite sure how that all works. And so she has 3 grown children. And so when her daughter, the second child, had a baby about 15 years ago, a beautiful little guy named Lucas, 20 minutes after this little baby is born, me, the guy that's never had any children, gets called into the delivery room, and there's this, they're gooey. I didn't know they're gooey when they're born. Never seen one before. And so my wife's youngest son reaches out his hand to me and says, congratulations, Rick. You're going to be a very important man in this little boy's life. Wasn't on my list. Things I wanted. I had no kids. How's that going to happen to me? So as time goes on, I get called Grandpa. And the grandkid, there's a little girl that's born, and they start coming over and having these sleepovers. And the little girl would sleep with my mom, and I'd sleep with Lucas in the guest room. And one Saturday or a Sunday morning, the mom comes to get them, and she says, Rick, come here, I gotta tell you something. She said, when I was getting Lucas ready to come over for the sleepover, I said, do you want to bring your little security blanket? And he said, no, Mom, I don't need to bring that security blanket. I'm sleeping with Grandpa Rick. The guy that threw the kid in a locker. The guy who took a group of kids on a school trip and screamed at them so bad that my adult supervisor locked herself in her own room. This guy that was screaming at a class so loud one time I had a colleague come in to see if I was okay. That's me. But when you come in, look at what can happen. And that ex-wife who I cackled as I went by, gleeful at her, what was going on. I made my amend to her, and we now play music together. Her second husband died in the middle of May, and my ex-wife reached out to me and said, will you play at Peter's funeral? Me and 3 tuba, the low brass section of a symphony orchestra, 3 trombones and a tuba, and I said I would be delighted. So I talked to my sponsor about it. She says, how do you feel? I said, I feel grateful. I said, no, I'm not grateful. I'm in awe, A-W-E, of the power of God working in this life that He has given me by practicing these principles. And I sat up there, we were in the choir loft up at the back, playing this music for my ex-wife's husband, and I felt genuine compassion and love for this woman. Because I didn't marry a bad person. I married quite a beautiful person, actually, and I can see that now. I am so grateful. My heart is filled to bursting with what this thing can do. I have more energy and excitement and love for what this thing can do today than I have ever had. So grateful to have been with you today. There's a painting. It stands on the side altar. St. Paul's Cathedral in London, England. It's a picture of a traditional robed figure standing with its right hand raised, knocking on a door, vines all over the place. The figure's holding a lantern. Up in the top corners of the picture, it says, the light of the world. Beneath it says, behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice and open the door, I will come into him and sup with him and he with me. And as I admit I'm powerless over alcohol, I open the door a little bit because the handle's inside, not outside. When I come to believe in a power that's not approval, when I come to believe in the power, I open the door a little more. Because the awakening doesn't happen in 12. 12 tells us we've had the awakening. And that is what now, where I hang my hat, that is where I rule. That's what rules my life. And that's the desire I have. My sponsor said to me all those years ago, she said, Rick, we do not think our way into right action. We act our way into right thinking, and the actions we take are called the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, which we in Al-Anon practice ourselves. Thank you for inviting me to this spectacular convention. God bless you all.